The rain was falling so hard that night it felt like the entire world was trying to wash away someone's pain. I was standing outside a small cafe, holding a broken umbrella, when a woman I barely knew ran toward me with tears in her eyes and one desperate question that would change both our lives forever. "Would you pretend to be my husband?" For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood her. The woman standing in front of me, soaked from the rain and trembling with fear, was the same person who always seemed strong, independent, and impossible to break. Her name was Seraphina, and she had always carried herself like someone who didn't need anyone. But that night, I saw something different in her eyes. I saw someone who was exhausted from fighting alone. I looked at her, confused and worried, and the only thing that came to my mind was a question that even surprised me. "Do I get to kiss my wife?" She stared at me for a second, and then, through all her fear and sadness, she almost smiled. Before I continue this emotional journey, if you believe that kindness, compassion, and second chances can change someone's life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel Echoes of Hope. Your support helps us bring more stories that remind us of the good still left in the world. My name is Caelan Brooks, and I never imagined that a simple favor would become the most meaningful chapter of my life. I met Seraphina 2 years before that rainy night. We worked in the same building, but we lived in completely different worlds. She was a successful architect who walked into meetings with confidence, while I was just a maintenance supervisor who fixed broken lights, repaired old elevators, and made sure everyone else's day went smoothly. Most people in the building barely noticed me. I was the person they called when something went wrong, but never the person they invited when things went right. Seraphina was different, though. She always thanked me. Not the quick, careless kind of thank you people gave when they wanted to leave. She looked at me and actually meant it. She remembered my name, asked about my day, and sometimes stayed a few extra minutes just talking. Over time, we became friends. She never told me much about her personal life, but I could tell she carried a sadness she tried to hide. Sometimes I would see her staring out the office window late at night, completely lost in thought. One evening, I asked her if everything was okay. She smiled and said, "Some battles are easier to hide when you're dressed well." I never forgot those words. Then, one morning, everything changed. I arrived at work and found Seraphina sitting alone in the lobby, staring at her phone. Her face was pale. I asked if she was all right. She quickly locked her phone and forced a smile. "Everything is fine." But it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, I noticed she became quieter. She stopped joining conversations. She stayed late every night. She looked like someone running from something she couldn't escape. I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to push. Until that rainy night. She had called me earlier that evening, asking if we could talk. I expected a normal conversation, maybe coffee after work. I never expected to see her standing in the rain, asking me to pretend to be her husband. I took off my jacket and covered her shoulders. "Seraphina, what happened?" She looked away. "My family." Those 2 words carried so much pain. She told me everything. Her father had built a successful company, and after his passing, her relatives had been fighting over control. Her uncle believed she was too young and too emotional to lead. The only reason they had not taken everything from her was because of a clause in her father's will. A clause that required her to be married before her 28th birthday. She had only 3 days left. Her relatives were already planning to remove her from the company. "They think I'm alone," she whispered. "They think nobody will stand beside me." I looked at her and felt something I couldn't explain. Anger. Not because she asked me for help, but because someone who spent her entire life pretending to be strong was finally admitting she needed someone. "So you need a fake husband," I said quietly. She nodded. "I know it's ridiculous. I know it's unfair. I don't know who else I can trust." That sentence hurt more than anything. Because she wasn't asking for a husband. She was asking for someone to believe in her. I should have said no. Any reasonable person would have. Pretending to be married to someone you secretly cared about was dangerous. It could destroy friendships. It could create feelings that were impossible to handle. But when I saw the tears she was trying to hide, I remembered something. Everyone deserves someone who chooses them when they are at their weakest. So I agreed. The next morning, our fake marriage began. We created a simple story. We had known each other for years. We had quietly fallen in love. We had decided to keep our relationship private. The first challenge was convincing everyone. Seraphina's relatives were suspicious from the beginning. Her uncle, Dorian Vale, looked me up and down and asked, "And what exactly do you do?" Before I could answer, Seraphina stepped closer and said, "He is the man who stood beside me when everyone else walked away." The room went silent. I had never heard anyone defend me like that. That moment was supposed to be an act. But it felt real. Days passed, and we started spending more time together. We practiced our story. We attended meetings. We answered questions. But something unexpected happened. The pretending started becoming natural. I learned that Seraphina loved old movies and hated thunderstorms. I learned she secretly collected handwritten letters because she believed words lasted longer than memories. I learned that every time she looked successful, she was actually fighting a fear that nobody would ever truly choose her. And she learned about me. She learned that I fix things because I liked seeing broken things become whole again. She learned that I spent years taking care of everyone because I knew what it felt like to be forgotten. One night, after a long day, we sat on the balcony of her apartment. She looked at me and said, "You know what's strange?" "What?" "I asked you to pretend to be my husband because I needed protection." She paused. "But somehow, you became the only person who made me feel safe." I didn't know what to say. Because the truth was, I felt the same way. She had entered my life pretending to need me. But she was the first person who made me feel like I mattered. Then came the day everything almost fell apart. Dorian discovered the truth. He found messages between us from before our arrangement and realized our marriage was not real. He confronted us during a company meeting. He smiled like he had already won. I knew this was a lie. Everyone looked at us. Seraphina froze. For the first time since I met her, I saw her completely afraid. I stepped forward. "Yes," I said. The room became silent. Our marriage started as an agreement. Seraphina looked at me, shocked. But I continued. But what happened after that was real. Dorian laughed. "You expect anyone to believe that?" I looked at Seraphina. And in that moment, I realized I was no longer pretending. I believe it. I told everyone how Seraphina had spent years carrying the weight of a family legacy. How she fought battles nobody saw. How she treated people with kindness even when she received none in return. I told them she didn't need someone to save her. She needed someone to stand beside her. And I wanted to be that person. The room was quiet. Then Seraphina walked toward me. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You weren't supposed to say those things," she whispered. "I know. You weren't supposed to mean them." "I know." She smiled sadly. "But you did." I nodded. "Yeah. I did." The legal battle with her relatives continued, but something changed. Seraphina stopped fighting like someone who was alone. She started believing she had people beside her. Eventually, she won. She kept her father's company and transformed it into something better. She created programs to help young designers who had talent but no opportunities. And me? I stayed. Not because of a contract. Not because of a promise. Because I loved her. 6 months later, we stood in the same cafe where she first asked me to pretend. The rain was falling again. She looked at me and laughed. I still can't believe you asked that question. I smiled. What question? She rolled her eyes. Do I get to kiss my wife? I laughed. I was nervous. You were impossible. Maybe. She looked down. Caelan, can I tell you something? Anything. That night, I didn't ask you because I needed a fake husband. She looked into my eyes. I asked because you were the only person I trusted. My heart felt heavy. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive with perfect timing. Sometimes it appears in the middle of chaos. Sometimes the person you least expect becomes the person who changes everything. I took her hand. This time, there was no pretending. No agreement. No act. Just two people who found each other when they needed someone the most. Before the story ends, I want to ask you something special. Please comment the word hope if this story touched your heart and reminded you that one kind person can completely change another person's life. And if this story brought you even a small moment of emotion, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and stay connected with Echoes of Hope for more stories that remind us that love, compassion, and second chances are still possible. Because sometimes, the person who agrees to pretend to be part of your life becomes the person who makes your life real.